Hello, friends and brothers. This is Justin Jones with Masonic Improvement, joined with the one and only Dennis Yates. How are you doing, Dennis?
Doing good. Glad to see you.
Good to see
Glad to
you.
be here.
Today, we're going to discuss the intricacies of peas and hominy. Um, it's a well-known secret. It's not so much a secret; it's a well-known fact that we emphasize green beans before the meeting, but in the meeting, peas and hominy has precedence.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Always.
yeah.
That's interesting. We might as well call it that, right? Since nobody cares to try to take action to create peace and harmony. Most people think that it's an end result that that you find from burying your head in the sand.
Let's re-emphasize what you just said because people think that peace and harmony is an end result. What do you mean by that?
Well, in my opinion, peace and harmony is really actions that you take in dealing with each other and with dealing with the lodge. It's an intentional um it's an intentional belief that your brothers are trying to do what they think are right, and so you have to, oh golly, it's so hard to say. So you have to, it's a, what happened, you got to take my porky pig out now. It's peace and harmony is not an end result. It's the feeling within. It's the internal, how you carry yourself into a conversation. So if you carry yourself into a conversation by believing that the brother that you're talking with is just as important as you are and feels just as passionately about masonry as you do, then you tend to have a little bit of compassion when your thoughts don't meet eye to eye, right? So, and which is really what we need so that we can have this thing called rhetoric,
Mhm.
right? You know, if we're really going to engage and sharpen each other, then we have to be able to um, believe in the best in each other so that we can come up with the best solution.
Mhm.
That's one portion of it. That's the personal, that's the internal portion. But there are external factors as well.
Yeah,
What's in what how do you feel about
I agree in many ways. If you hadn't said anything I don't agree with, peace and harmony isn't about avoiding. Of course, we're gentlemen, right? We want to watch our words carefully, right? We want to behave like gentlemen. So it's not about that aspect, but we shouldn't feel as though we have to avoid topics in making decisions because it might upset somebody, right?
it?
We
Right.
we should be able to do what's the best for our lodge without worrying about somebody trying to assault us in the lodge room or something like that. And the reason for that is, and that's an extreme example, but the reason for that is that as grown men, we recognize that we don't always have to have 100% agreement on everything we talk about. And that just because, like you said, we're all brothers, and just because you may feel passionately one way and I may feel passionately another, it doesn't mean that their views are any less legitimate than yours. How they feel is how they feel, right? Now, we could go down that rabbit hole. Like if all they want to do is fundraise and you feel like that's not the best way, is it really the best way for them? Probably not. But that's a whole other thing. The whole where I'm going with this along the lines of peace and harmony is that we have to be able to discuss things. We have to be willing to hear other people's opinions and beliefs without feeling threatened by that, if that makes sense.
Right. Right. Well, now I think, and I've recently changed my view because of Robert Park. You know, I think that if the people that are doing the fundraising, even though I disagree with it, if they're enjoying the fundraising, let them do it. That's
Mhm.
their Mason, right?
Mhm.
Because not everybody's going to be, you know, eye to eye. Not everybody's going to get the same out of masonry because, frankly, we come from different places. We are in a different place in in our journey in this point in time. We are in a different place than the next guy. So the next brother. In
Mhm.
fact, we can be parallel with each other, walking side by side, doing the same thing, doing the exact same things, but your perception is going to be completely different than mine.
Mhm.
When let's say two people are walking down the street in New York City and there's just shoulder to shoulder everybody coming and going in front of one brother may think that it's complete chaos and he hates it and it's just a bunch of people being rude and bumping into each other, and the other brother may look at it as a symphony of different souls and traveling through time, having their moment in time, uh, all at the same time in this one place. And
Mhm.
so you never know really where someone's at, and you can be right there with them.
I've come to share a pretty similar viewpoint. Fundraising is not for me, right? I'm never gonna sell a raffle
Me
ticket,
neither. Me neither.
or I'm not gonna do that kind of thing. If the lodge
Right.
needs money, ask me for a donation, I'll make a donation. But I'm not gonna spend a whole morning out there doing something like that. But to that aspect, to that point, if I'm sitting in a lodge and I have a brother that wants to do a fundraiser for some project in a lodge, sure, okay, that's fine.
Right.
Just understand, like I just said, I'm not going to really do that.
Yeah. Don't.
That's not the Freemasonry I want. So don't guilt me for not doing that. And in return, show the same respect when I give an education presentation. And I won't guilt you because you don't give a presentation or you're not interested in it, as long as you show the same mutual respect.
Right. I agree. I agree. And that does um, create peace and harmony when we have that respect for each other and appreciation for each other as different people,
Mhm.
and but um, we still tolerate each other, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the lesson, in my opinion, of indifference. When they're talking, when our lessons are talking about uh, being indifferent, it's not saying put your head in the sand. It's just toleration of other people because they're other people and they're not us. That's I think that's that lesson.
I was thinking about this the other day, and I want to be sure I'm recanting what I arrived at because it had been a few days. But I've heard an analogy before of the Freemasonry being like a stool, right? You have the fundraising aspect, the fellowship aspect, and the esoteric aspect. And a healthy lodge, you just can't have one leg of the stool way higher than the other, right? It's not a stool. You have to,
Right.
if a good stool is balanced, right? And you know what? In fact, I think it was Brother Park in his interview. I think that's where I heard it
It
recently
may have
was,
been,
I
yeah,
think it was
because
him.
I was thinking the same thing that I just recently heard it in an interview, and that's what it is.
But
I was rewatching that.
I also think each of those legs, and I'm not trying to sound degrading in any way, but I think each of those legs represents a different point where somebody is on their Masonic journey.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
everybody probably goes to the fundraiser phase, especially when you're new. Like, oh well, I'll come sling some fish. Sure, I'll sell some raffle tickets. But
That's
you
my job.
eventually,
We're charity.
but eventually, I think people lean more into the fellowship aspect, and ultimately, I feel, of course, it's my opinion, but ultimately, I feel like you want to end up at the esoteric aspect. I think if you really have developed as a Mason, that's probably the course you'll take. Now, that isn't to say that somebody might not spend their entire Freemasonry on fundraising, or they might not spend their entire fundraising on fellowship, or that they might go through those more slowly. That's just to say, I think that's kind of the progression, and we should support one another instead of saying, well, no, that leg doesn't belong on the stool, because
Well,
I'm just as guilty. But when you start cutting the legs off the stool, everything just falls over.
right. Well, and this is a good segue into what I believe are the external factors in peace and harmony. So typically lodges are divided um, when there's not a shared vision and not an understanding of culture, what the
Hmm.
culture is of the lodge. You have, the this generation fighting this generation, and nothing ever gets done because all you're doing is fighting all the time. And the reason why, and usually it's not a bunch of people. Usually it's one or two people that are involved in this argument, but it creates tension within the whole lodge, and really stresses out your lodge.
Hmm.
I think that when we appreciate each other and the goals that they have, and we talked about this in the last interview as well, that in doing this, forming when you form the culture and then you have that fundraiser or you have whatever, it should align with the goals. It should align your um, with your vision and your culture.
Yeah.
If it doesn't align with that, cut it out,
Yeah.
because all it's going to do is create tension and begrudgment, as a matter of fact.
All
So
right.
just like the guy guilting you for not, wanting to do the fundraiser, that's what happens. Because frankly, I don't want to go sell raffle tickets at a gun show. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. It's not my cup of tea. I don't want to sit here and watch red caps walking past me all day long. I don't care how much money I might make.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do it. And call me silly, but when you see only one or two people doing that fundraiser month after month after month, maybe it's your sign that you need to pull it from the roster and stop doing that fundraiser.
Yeah. No, and if to that point, I said I would donate, I wouldn't spend time. But if you can't even tell me what the fundraiser's for, I probably won't even donate. That's a peeve of mine because if you don't know why you're raising money, then you don't have
Right.
direction. You're doing it just do it.
If
And
it's
that
for the general
doesn't
fund, yeah.
it doesn't sit yeah, it doesn't sit right
It,
with me.
at
If you
least
say
at least save the clock tower, right?
save the clock tower, yeah. Well, if you can say we're going to replace the carpet, or we need to redo the sheetrock, or we're going to change
Right.
out the doors or something
There's
like
a definite goal.
it's a definite goal. If you want it
Right.
to pay the bills, I'm sorry, man. I'm not going to do that. There's
Well,
ways you're supposed
yeah,
to.
that's what dues are for. And really that's what dues are for with the rest of it as well. And so I'm not real big on that anyways.
Hmm.
If it's going to be fixing something in the lodge, I say pass the hat, and or actually make a pledge that everybody's going to give X amount of even dollars by time the project's over. Make sure that that's funded.
Yeah.
That way the kitty gets paid back. That's we talked about this in the last episode that we talked on this kind of thing. Is that it's just like when a pastor goes into a new church, they say we're going to erect a new temple, so we're going to use that other one for youth, and we're going to build this great big temple.
Hmm.
Everybody gets behind it, excited about it, and it gets done. But I still think it should it and usually that happens because people pledge money, right? It doesn't happen because they're doing fish fries or whatever. Usually that happens within the church, within the church membership, raising those funds.
Hmm.
And sometimes it is one or two people that are putting in the most amount, but it's still the church raising the funds. And I think it should be the same way with the lodge.
Churches
So,
out there slinging fish.
oh no, when we're doing it for the membership. We fry turkeys at Thanksgiving, like 9, 10 turkeys, and it's for the membership. It's not for outside people.
Hmm.
Though we probably ought to at Thanksgiving have it for outside people, the people that are going without. But it is an internal type thing, and people donate to the cause.
Yeah, something that my Yorkrat did the last 2 years is we made meals for, I don't remember if it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, but we made them for homeless veterans in the county. And so we just made
Nice.
a whole bunch of like meals in styrofoam. There, potatoes and some ham and some turkey, all the Thanksgiving stuff, and just sent that. And that feels so much better than just giving money to anything.
Oh
Like
yeah.
if you do charity, do something like that. We
Right.
also donated supplies to it was another veteran project. And I mean, you'd be surprised. Like people that never would buy a raffle ticket or something like that, they would bring like 5 containers of mouthwash and stuff like that. It was oh, I forget the technical term, but it's like the stuff used in a bathroom, things like that. And
Right.
that's so much better in my opinion.
Well, we at our church we have a gym project. It's an opportunity. It's Goliad Youth Mission, and it's an opportunity for the kids to give back to the community. And what we do is every year we pick 3 or 4 houses, and the men get together and fix the facade of the house, whether it be wood, brick, whatever, and make it solid, make it right, fix
Mhm.
windows, stuff like that. And then the kids come and scrape the house for 2 days, and then the last day they paint the whole thing. And we usually do 3 houses a year in Goliad with this project. And
Nice.
last year it was 4. And you know, believe it or not, that just didn't happen out of nowhere. Lavinia and I thought about it and decided to put that thought into motion and put the seed money together for them, and now here they are. I guess this is the 6th year
Mm.
that they've been doing houses, and you know that, in my opinion, and I'm not saying that we give the seed money every year anymore either. I'm just saying that it happened from ponying up,
Yeah.
doing something that's not
I'll tell
that
you
those
something.
people that those people will never know. They'll never watch the show, so
No,
they'll never know that Lavinia and I did that. And so, and now it's not us that are doing it; it's other members of the church that are doing it, that are contributing to make that happen. So
something
it's
that
it really
really
is cool.
that really grinded my gears was we do a again talking about New York, right? We do a this is all within like the last 2 years because there was some big changes and we started doing all these things. There is a local it's not an orphanage, but it's like a house between for kids that are getting adopted and stuff like that. Kids with
Yeah,
that are, basically what we do is we get a list from several of the local churches and this organization that like here's some kids, and we don't have like real names or addresses or anything. It's just basically giving us a name and what they want for Christmas, because these are kids that would otherwise not get anything like that.
right, right.
And the brother
Kind
that
of, kind of like an angel tree.
it's like an angel tree, and the brother that brought it to us had been doing it through his church, but the catch was it was always anonymous. It wasn't done.
Right,
This isn't to glorify us. It's to
right.
help children out. And we had some guys at the lodge that were really upset that they could not take a picture with all the presents and post it on Facebook and things like that. And it's like that that defeats the purpose. And if granted, I'm the first person out there, I'll take a picture any opportunity I get, right? But if it's asked not to do it, respect that, because ultimately, because I was taught like no one's going to toot your horn for you, and so I understand where they're coming from. However, it's not always about us; it's about the kids. And
Well, in that, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you can't do something good for somebody without absolutely having to have that recognition, what does the Bible say? And don't let the left hand know what the right is doing, or maybe I'll get
I
it.
was fixing it. That's exactly what I was fixing to quote.
Yeah.
Effort.
Well,
I wanted everybody to see that I'm not a complete heathen. I do read it, or I have read it. I'm not going to say
I
I
think
can
there's
read it
a
right now, but I have read it.
I think there's a time and place, right? If you're going to do a scholarship, like an award ceremony, you should absolutely take pictures and you should post it out there. But if you're going to donate things to children that aren't going to have anything otherwise, you're kind of at that line where like have some respect for these people because they don't want their names getting out. They don't want
Yeah, that's a big thing. Yes.
yeah, this is supposed to be like a discreet thing. And that's what makes it
Yeah.
special because it's discreet. The kids don't know, the parents don't know, they don't expect it. Well, the parents know because they get a phone call. That way they don't get when they
Right.
come, because what they do is they just come put it on the porch like quietly
Right.
and then leave. And
Yeah.
so
You don't want the pit bull coming out
yeah,
when
so
you're
they
putting
would
presents down.
they would tell the parents like that, not hey, we're delivering something, we're gonna bless you, or however they want to determine it. And that's all the little tag would say, like you've been blessed this Christmas. And I mean, totally anonymous. And that's the way to do it. If you're gonna do something
Right.
like that, do it like that, make it special.
Right.
But if you
Well,
have to have the
and
recognition, like if you have
yeah.
to have it, if it bothers you, then don't even do it, man. You're doing it for the wrong reason.
Right. Right. I agree. I agree 100%. Uh, so getting back to our first focus
Mhm.
of the peace and harmony, I I recently wrote a paper, and one of the thoughts that I had was that the internal is being that every brother has a claim to your kind office. So every brother deserves your kindness in the conversation. Like you stated earlier, gentlemen. You
Mhm.
know, that's one of the big things that I was pushing is whether you disagree or not, um, as long as we're civil and never strike each other with words in anger and be the gentleman that we were always meant to be, that our fraternity was meant to be in debate, in rhetoric, just trying to find the solutions for the day.
Mhm.
When we come to it with that idea, then we're going to find peace and harmony. And that really resonates when that becomes the culture of your lodge. That's when you really start seeing gears turning and things happening and shaking and moving in your lodge is when people start realizing that everybody is in it for the right reasons.
Mhm.
That's like you said, sometimes you get that one or two, but in reality, once you really push that, you're not going to tolerate anything less than the best from uh, from each other, then you tend to uh, find a better way. Now I'd like to talk about external because we are a democracy, right? What is the one thing that causes the most stress in a lot?
Yeah, they're brothers.
Well,
I'm not sure.
we've already touched on it, and it's the culture not having an aligned vision
Mm.
and having these guys thinking that lodge should be one way and these guys thinking it should be another, and everybody trying to push their agenda without democracy. Democracy is the cure for all these problems. When you decide that you fully support what Freemasonry stands for, which is democracy, we created it. When you realize that that's what we stand for, then it goes to a vote. And the majority chooses that this is what we're going to stand for. This is what we're going to do. This is where we're going to put our money. This is what we're going to, and you have to just accept it. And sometimes it sucks.
Mhm.
It's the worst outcome, worst case
Mhm.
scenario in my mind sometimes.
Yeah.
But, I just have to love it because they actually did it through democracy and it wasn't a couple of brothers pushing their own agenda.
I think the more I study older Freemasonry, like 1700s Freemasonry, kind of early 1800s. And the more we have conversations like this, the more I really think Freemasonry, especially during like the Enlightenment period, it became kind of I hate to say dinner club because it's so much more than that. But it was a
Right.
place where the best and brightest in the community, they came, they put on their dinner coats, their afternoon wear, and their evening wear, I mean, and they would have a fine dinner, discuss important issues, and then they would have like one or two presentations from local people, and that's I mean everyone who was anyone that was a man at the time was involved in those circles. And where I'm going where this ties in, this is why I think peace and harmony was so important, because you would have composers and scientists and college professors and authors and things like this all in the same room, and you would have someone come and give a presentation on say alchemy or
And you would have financiers in those rooms too.
yeah, yeah,
People with money.
yeah,
So that's a fact that
yeah.
they specifically came to try to figure out the solution by
but my
listening to other people.
but
Go
my
ahead.
point
I'm
my
sorry.
point is you would have look at Isaac Newton. The things he talked about at the time, they were heretical, right? And
Right.
they were wildly, especially at that time. Can you imagine him giving a presentation and people in a normal room, people would just lose their minds over this. Like this is the craziest thing I ever heard. That's why it was important to have an environment like Freemasonry where you can come and discuss these wild topics instead of everybody losing their mind and pointing fingers and going and telling the authorities that hey, we got a heretic
Gnashing of
here.
teeth.
The gnashing of teeth. They would sit there and they would respectfully listen, and then what would most likely happen is they would go back, and if they had the means, they would probably test those hypotheses that were being presented. And if you look historically, like scientifically, a lot of these guys were brother masons, and the people that built off other people's discoveries were also local masons. And what would happen is
Right.
they would hear a presentation at the lodge, and then they'd go back to their laboratory or whatever, and then they would experiment on it, and they would come up with hypotheses. And I'm just talking about from a scientific perspective, but you have the same thing here with like music. You have like music theory and color theory for painting and stuff like that. So it provided this environment where we can talk about whatever we want to talk about, because you can't do that outside these walls anyway. And it's a place where we can actually sit and talk without people interrupting us and scoffing and mocking us, because we have to have this is peace and harmony is if you can't maintain peace and harmony, you're not in there anymore. So if you
Right.
want to be in this room with the best and brightest in your community, you sat there and you respectfully just listened to what they had to say, even if you didn't agree with a word with it. And
Right.
that's why I think it was so important. And so I
Yep.
think I think that this is I think this is where it really gained its stride. This concept of peace and harmony was during this period, and we had to be willing to get back to that. We had to be willing to listen to other people's thoughts without feeling like we have to stand up, worship master. Just listen to the thoughts, and
Right.
you don't have to feel threatened by what other people think and what they suggest. Because, like you said, this is a democracy anyway. You'll have an opportunity to talk, but there's a time and a place. And this is why the Robert's Rules of Order are so important, because follow the process and stop letting yourself get butt hurt about silly things, and just listen to what people have to say and follow the process and follow the democratic process after that. And if the lodge feels that way, then it'll go in your favor anyhow. And if it doesn't, you don't have to be right all the time.
Right.
You joined the lodge, hopefully, because you didn't want to be the smartest man in the room, right?
Hopefully.
If you're the smartest man in the room, then why are you there? You joined
Right.
because you didn't want to be the smartest man in the room. So trust the democratic process. And just because you don't understand it or agree with it, that's okay, because you shouldn't think you're the smartest man in the room.
Right. Right. Well, and that's a big problem with all of us in some ways, I think, is that we tend to let ourselves get stuck. You know, that first thing that everybody uses as an excuse for time. It's really us needing to leave our garbage outside the door.
Hmm.
Leave that baggage behind as you walk through the door, because otherwise you're going to get pulled back by something around your neck.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to point out, and I think that it pretty much goes right along with democracy, is the master of the lodge, and this is why I wanted to kind of talk about this tonight, because we're getting into election season. The master of the lodge is not, he is the total, he is the final word in the lodge, right?
Hmm.
Ultimate authority. I mean, more authority than almost any other organization in the world, probably. The master of a lodge has total authority over that lodge. However, it's the authority to manage the flow of the lodge, the setting of the lodge, the temperament of the lodge, all those kinds of things. Everything within the bounds of the rules, bylaws, rules, and regulations, and the laws of the Grand Lodge of Texas, the state laws, and our federal laws. That's his bounds. And that's what he is supposed to rule and guide over. Otherwise, it's not up to him to make the decisions on this or that happening with it, this fundraiser or that fundraiser happening. That's really not his, that's not to his option. He's the tiebreaker in a vote, but it's a lodge vote. He
Yeah.
still works for the lodge. He's a servant leader. That's what it is to be a servant leader. You're
Hmm.
managing the chaos. You're not telling people what to do and if they can and cannot, except for when it applies to some things that I'm going to talk about here in a second. Parliamentary procedure being one of them.
Mm.
But one of the biggest things that this just hits it right between the eyes of what we're talking about with people that just can't get out, can't sit in one place and listen to anybody. They're beside themselves. Education, 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 education.
Hmm.
We have to be humble enough to always be the apprentice.
Agree.
And we have to be humble enough to be a servant leader and mentor our next generation coming in. And the way that we do that is getting rid of the ego. And ego, a long time ago, for to 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 help you to help people wrap their head around uh, ego. Ego is in essence edging God out. So you're saying that you're wiser and smarter than anybody else in the room. Well, that's you not being humble. That's us. I should say that's us. I should stop saying that's you. I'm bad about that. I'm talking to people out there in the great wide world telling them that's you. But
Hmm.
really, it's us. That's us not being humble, us not willing to accept that there's somebody, that God put somebody smarter in the room for me to learn from at that particular moment. And so we have to leave our egos at the door. That's one of the two things. Do you have anything on ego?
I just think it's interesting that so many religions emphasize the importance of letting go of your ego. Buddhism in particular is what really sticks out to me. And but other religions have the same concepts. It just goes by different terms. But you're absolutely right. The ego is the enemy. Um, there's really no situation in which having an ego, frankly, would really be beneficial to you. And so it's part of us. We have a certain pride in ourselves, but we have to be willing to let that go. Like you said, we have to. A wise man knows that he knows nothing, right? It's the same concept. Yeah, it's the same concept also as we've said before, like a you're never a master, you're always an apprentice to somebody. Where we should, if you feel like you're at the top of your game, then
You need to do
you
something else.
you have failed. You failed.
Find another game.
Well, the thing is, you never can be the top. So if you feel like you're at the top of
Right,
the game,
right. But if
you've
you,
made a
yes,
mistake somewhere.
yeah, if you think you're at the top of the game, then whatever game you're a part of is not doing you any good. So
Yeah.
you might as well get out and do something.
And you could say, well, what about athletes, things like that? Granted, we're talking mentally, right? But what about physically? You could be at the top of the game, sure, but there's always someone better than you. Just because you're at the top of like the what's the baseball league? What is that? I don't even know. So you may be the best baseball player out there, right? You may be the Tiger Woods of baseball, but that doesn't mean that there's not someone else out there that's better. They may not be professional, but as soon as you actually hit that point, you're immediately declining. And someone, if
Right.
you are resting on your laurels, there's someone else that is working. So
Well,
it's
and
cyclical.
to your point, look at Michael Jordan. Best there ever was, probably in, well, we say the best there ever was, but
Yeah, I love his
LeBron
music.
James is LeBron James is right there now, so it's hard to deny that. But also, you think about Michael Jordan, and he was the top of his game in basketball, but
Mhm.
then he went to play baseball,
Yeah.
and he was a nobody, right? It was just his name that got recognition. It wasn't his batting average, that's for sure.
I
So,
still like watching old videos of Larry Bird.
oh
I mean, that guy was a wizard on
man,
the court too.
he was freaking awesome. I
Yeah.
love a lot of those older players. I mean, they just, man. Well, I don't even watch it that much anymore. I shouldn't say older players. I'm sure there's players that are just as good nowadays. You
Hmm.
know, it's almost like watching Kirk with the Mavs, man, with his fade back hit. He would always just fade back and boom, he always got the 2 points,
Yeah.
sometimes three. But yeah, so you may be good, but there's always somebody better. And even if they're not better every day, there's going to be that one day that they're going to be better. There's that one day that Michael Jordan was not all that great, and his competitor just stomped a hole in his tail, and vice versa. So
Well, you might
everybody's
be
day will come.
you might be widely regarded as like the most knowledgeable scholar of string theory, right? And people come to you and they ask you questions, and then you're in a room having a conversation with somebody, and something they do or something they ask or something they say gives you like an epiphany, like an aha moment, right?
Yeah.
So you sure people looked up to you, but if you're always an apprentice and you recognize that, you continue to grow. But if you have that ego, oh, I'm the smartest guy at this. I don't have anything to learn from anybody here. You miss an opportunity. The same thing, you could be like a sage of Kabbalah. You may think you know
Right.
everything there is to know it, and somebody may say something and it just totally unlocks some insight that you never considered before. If you are a student of life, of Kabbalah, like a true student, you'll recognize that and embrace that and learn from it. So it's always important. And it's even go back to sports. If you think you're the and you see this, you see examples, especially like MMA, like you got these guys and they're super
Yes.
super confident, and this guy doesn't have anything to teach me. They get humbled, right? They
Right.
and they either learn from that or they
Yeah,
just
I've seen
become the
some
that
making
guy.
some gestures and all that, and just getting co-cocked and laid out in
Yeah,
one shot. Yeah, I've
yeah,
seen that several times.
yeah.
So the other point that I was going to make, and then it moves us into the other next thing on my list that helps with peace and harmony is instead of thinking of God as God, which it falls right in line with this. Think about it as good orderly direction. So that's another one of those catchphrases I learned years ago. These two catchphrases I learned when I was a kid, right after my mom died. I was 13 years old and kind of tumbling, and so these therapists were very smart in helping me understand basic concepts. And one being the ego, which deals with the internal and frankly the edging God out in good orderly direction. They both deal with the internal, but good orderly direction also deals with the external.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the balance in this, because the external, that we have the ability we have the ability to control both, right? But the external tends to cause more waves than the internal, because it's how we deal with each other and how we carry ourselves in that rhetoric situation.
Hmm.
Do you want to expand on that, or you want me to just jump into what I was going to say after?
Go ahead, jump in.
Okay,
Where this is
so
going.
the next piece of education, we have to educate ourselves on the rules of engagement. In Masonry, the reason why we're so successful in our rhetoric and debate is because we follow parliamentary procedures.
Mm-hmm.
Parliamentary procedures are paramount in a lodge. Otherwise, you get the one guy that's bullying the whole lodge with his own opinions on a certain topic, and he won't let it go, and the master lets him keep getting up and keep getting up. That should never happen.
Mm-hmm.
That and the other thing, two people standing across from each other, going back and forth with each other. Have you ever seen? Well, some people will understand this. Have you ever seen bulls sitting on either side of a fence?
Bulls?
Yeah.
No.
So it's so crazy. So bulls, and actually, I've seen it happen more so across highways and across roads. You have one bull in one pasture and one bull in the other pasture across the highway from him, and they will sit there and hoof stomp a hole into the ground a foot deep, acting like they're, who's tougher, who's
Mm-hmm.
tougher, who's the alpha in this situation. And they will dang near dig a hole underneath the fence, just trying to scuff and huff at each other, because they're the alpha. They're the alpha in their pasture, and then they see this other bull in this other pasture, and they don't realize it's a different pasture. They
Yeah.
just see that bull, and so all they do is fight back and forth and make a mess out of everything and get nowhere. Get absolutely nowhere. I've never seen them go through the fence, just huffing and puffing, getting themselves all worked up and getting nowhere with the results. And I think that I see that in the lodge sometimes. And if we followed parliamentary procedure properly, if the master knew what that was and understood it, if the entire lodge knew what that was and understood it, that kind of thing wouldn't happen. And you also wouldn't waste all night on one time.
Yeah. I've seen exactly what you talk about many times, unfortunately. No, no, they just to recap, because people may be wondering now, like you stand up and wait to be recognized, and what is it? You can speak on something twice. You speak on it
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah.
You,
You get 2 minutes. You get 2 minutes to say your piece, and you sit down. You do not stay standing.
mhm,
And then you get one more chance to stand up and rebuttal after somebody says something. And
mhm,
each person gets that. And then if that's it, once that's done, if nobody else has anything to say, then it's time for a vote.
yeah. It's not the
That's your
place for
discussion.
it's not the place for people to have conversations across the room, like you're saying. It
Right.
there's a reason for committees, first of all. Like
Well, yes,
those
absolutely.
those conversations should have taken place outside in a committee meeting. But yeah,
I
that's
was
not
just thinking about that. That's
but
part of good orderly direction is the committees.
it
The
is, isn't it?
committees. Yes. Yeah, that's something. In fact, I was a little bit frustrated last night at lodge. We were getting ready um for elections, making
Mm,
sure everybody was ready and certified. We had the district instructor. We had two district instructors there. One was assisting a lot throughout the room, and the other was sitting up with the master while everything was going on. And at the end, we get ready, and this happened twice: once during the lodge meeting and once during this portion. Um, the uh, the district instructor stands up to make a motion that we accept the the work of all these different officers.
mhm,
He stands up to make that motion, and then somebody else could second that, right? Well, he stands up, and then somebody else stands up and just blurts it out. I make a motion without being acknowledged, anything else. And really, it should have been that district instructor making the motion. It is ultimately a lodge decision on if people are ready or not. But when you're doing it for the district instructor's approval, we're trying to do everything, we're trying to do things a little bit better than just every other lodge. Instead of leaving it to the lodge who will let anybody go through if they're suffering, we wanted the district instructor to say, yeah, these guys are ready. This is a strong bunch. And
mhm.
so he stands up, and then somebody stands up and blurts it out, and it's like, golly, can't you just have a little bit more poise and wait and second it instead?
Mhm.
And that happened the first time that happened in the meeting is when we had a proficiency. The uh, the district instructor stood up, was nodding his head, and was real pleased with the work. And somebody else stood up and blurted it out. Just had to be there. Just had to be first. And
Mhm.
what makes me even more mad, now at least these guys stood up, right? What really pisses me off is when I see guys just sitting there, second, second. I make a motion. I make a motion. It's like, dude, if you aren't willing to stand up and do it proper, you don't need to make the motion, because not only is it waiting for the master to give you the opportunity to make that motion, but it also gives the secretary time to see who it is and write it down in their notes.
Well, it's for that same reason you're supposed to stand up and be recognized for seconding too.
Yes,
Because then
exactly.
otherwise the secretary is always who made that second? Who made that motion? Slow it
Yeah.
down, man.
And the
It's
secretary
not a
did that.
contest.
Yeah.
It's
The
not a
secretary had
contest.
to do that. It's like, you idiots. I hope they're not watching.
Probably
Take
not for
that
the
part
sound of
out.
it. Probably not for the sound of it.
Right. But it really frustrates me when, brothers, when you've got your your district team in your lodge and you're doing something that would require approval of sorts, that they would be the more solid approval. Let them do their job. Let them do what they were there to do. Let them, in my opinion, that actually really just solidifies everything when you let somebody else do the motion.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
It's kind of disrespectful, in my opinion. That's kind of how I feel.
Well,
I
it's
may be wrong, but it seems disrespectful.
we discussed before that inside the lodge is supposed to be a like a sacred, reflective place. Correct. Granted, we're talking business meetings, but it's still supposed to be a sacred, reflective place.
Well, it
And
used to not be just business meetings.
I know. And however,
I know you know. I'm saying that for
if
them.
if you are standing up
You guys.
and blurting things out, if you are having conversations across the lodge, it's no longer a quiet, contemplative environment like it should be. It's a bunch of guys hooting and hollering and just talking just to talk. And there it goes back to the ego because we think we know better than our predecessors. But the processes, the fact that we have ritual to open and close, to create a certain mindset, the fact that we have the parliamentary procedures, the rules of order, the fact that we have these rules on how you're supposed to do things, it all exists for a reason. And if you actually take it all seriously, you take it all seriously, and you're incorporating education as you should. You're creating an environment where we're slowing down. We're going somewhere separate from the profane world. This is a different place. It is a sacred, reflective location. And we're going to sit there and actually listen to what's being said as we go through the ritual. We're going to actually listen to the education. And when conversations are taking place, because this is also meant to be facilitated for conversation, for discussion on concepts. You have a lecture, let's have some discussion. You can't have everybody standing up and blurting things out. So you follow the
Right.
rules of order and you speak on it twice, and everybody has an opportunity to say something. And then you
Well,
handle
we do that.
you have to.
Yeah, we do that in the CME class.
Yeah. And then when it's done, you close it ritually and you're getting yourself mentally prepared. I mean, that's why I always was a fan of the master's charge when you're closing, because it sets the tone. Hey, this is something, we're here somewhere doing something special. We're now about to leave that, but don't forget the things you learned here. And you're exiting
Right.
that special place. So there is a reason for all this. There's a reason for this peace and harmony, because you're in the sanctum sanctorum. You don't yell at each other and blurt things out in the sanctum sanctorum. It's a special place. And really that sanctum sanctorum is here. It's here. That's and but you can't work here and here if you don't have a quiet place that you set aside to do that.
Right. Right. Absolutely. But that's one of the biggest causes for tension in a lodge is not having uh order in the lodge. And really that's a master's job. And that's where he has ultimate authority. And so it in my opinion, in those situations, you don't recognize the person that blurted anything out.
Mhm.
You take the initiative and only recognize the person who stood up and waited for you to say something. Even if they stood up and blurted something out, you don't go to them. You go to person number 3 that stood up and waited for your attention.
Yeah.
And you go to that person. And if people get mad, gavel them down. That's your job.
They'll
But
get they'll get mad the first few times you do it, but then they'll understand this is the expectation. It might even
right,
be something like, brother, would you care to stand up and make that in the form of emotion instead of just, you wouldn't say it instead of
right,
putting it out, but just say, will you care to stand up and make that in the form of emotion?
right. Well, and in reality, that ought to be something that you're teaching as an education class, anyways, in your lodge, is so that everybody has an opportunity to learn those kinds of things just instead of making an example out of somebody out of the blue.
Hmm.
As a master, if your lodge is has poor habits like that, then I would suggest having an actual education
Yeah.
night on those types of things. In
And
fact, go ahead.
if you have someone that's new to the fraternity and that's all they see, they're going to assume that's the reality of how it should be. So that's why it's important to have that education, or be firm on it as a leader and say, and just you can even say at your first meeting, these are the expectations. And I don't think
Yeah,
saying, would you care to stand up and make that informed motion is rude or anything. It's more of a reminder of your expectations than anything. Because if you set an expectation and never follow through with it or remind people of it, you might as well never make an expectation. So
well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so if you if you do, and it's probably a nice way to say it. I don't say things the nicest way always, but but
Well,
there's
no,
probably
I mean that's nicer than what I'd say.
yeah.
Just sit down and shut up, brother.
Yeah.
Put a
So
sock in it.
there's a way to reinforce it, and I think it comes from education, but I think it also comes from the East, and I
Well,
think it
yeah,
also
it
comes from your
is
peers.
right. But my thought is, there's lodges out there that have masters that never really went through the line. They were pushed through quick as they became master masons. They were pushed through the line, and in those kind of lodges that do that, they typically do not have best in practice lodge
Mhm.
meetings. So those are concepts that a bunch of brothers have never even seen. You know, there's many lodges out there that have gone 5, 10 years without revisiting any common sense um, practices for their lodge,
Mhm.
that don't revisit their bylaws, rules, and regulations, that don't revisit their culture, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's you know, I think that it's fitting as a master, and it could just be the master giving the education, saying, at the first meeting, this is my expectation, and this is what we're going to do, and then from there remind them gently by saying, would you like to stand up and make that in a form in and say that in the form of emotion.
Mhm.
That then it is, the right thing to do. But I think that we ought to have a reminder of pressure first, because there's so many of these young guys that just haven't seen a good representation of a lodge.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. But you set the example and you set the expectations as a leader. And really that's not being a dictator, that's being a servant leader. Because ultimately by setting these expectations and standing by them, you may come across as harsh at first, but it's beneficial to your lodge because it'll help maintain this peace and harmony we're talking about. But it'll also keep everything orderly, and it'll keep your meetings going smoothly, and everybody ultimately will be happier because you led. But we're talking about servant leaders, but also let's not forget you're elected to lead. You're elected to lead that lodge, and the best way to lead anything is efficiently. And you can do
Yeah,
that without being you're not telling people we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. You're not dictating. You're not being a despot, but you're laying out. There's a difference between that and laying out expectations and abiding by them for the purpose of maintaining peace and harmony.
right, right. And I think if a master words it right and does it well, then it'll be accepted well.
Well,
And
also, if he's been communicating to, as he's going through the chairs, it should really be people when they elect him, they should know like, hey, he's going to have these expectations. It shouldn't come as a
right,
shock to anybody.
right. If I was put in the East next week, then I don't think anybody would be surprised of me saying what my expectations are.
Mhm.
I think they would recognize it and accept it and respect it. I really do. Just because that's the way I carry myself. Even when I'm in lodge, I show that example every time I stand up to make a motion, or every time, somebody else really screws the pooch on something, then I will stand up, wait to be recognized, and then I'll correct them or whatever. If, we had one time they wanted to, never mind. I don't want to get any lodges, but
I know a launch
I've,
somewhere one time.
I,
That's what when I went to the forum with Cody Stewart, he's like, you should never start a story with at my lodge. It shows me I know a lodge
yeah, right,
somewhere that does this.
right. I was at a lodge one time, and I saw. So now another thing that's a big, big problem with peace and harmony: understanding what your landmarks are and what is not, because we do have landmarks like the ritual. That's a landmark.
Mhm.
We have landmarks as far as how we how we see a brother off when he passes. We have other landmarks within Freemasonry that are real landmarks that you don't change. It's just not an option. But then the rest of it, man, do it the way your lodge wants to do it.
Yeah,
Put democracy in place.
I agree.
What are some other landmarks that you can think of off the top of your head? I know I hit you off guard off, you know,
Let's recap
there's
the one
very
you said.
few.
Huh?
Huh?
It's very few. Yeah. Let's recap the ones you said as I go through these.
I said the ritual
Mm-hmm.
and how we treat brothers when we send them off. Those are landmarks.
Gosh, man. The only one that really comes to mind, I'm not even sure if it's a landmark, but I think it is, but belief in a higher power. I think that's one of the ancient landmarks. Um,
Right.
you did catch me off guard on this. Let's look.
But the
So
one of the
Mackey has 25 landmarks. There's actually,
whew,
yeah. The
but
fraternal modes.
Mackey was a Mac Daddy badass when it came to Freemasonry. Also,
Yeah. So you got the fraternal modes of recognition, the division of
yeah,
Freemasonry into three symbolic degrees. I don't think it's a landmark because that came around like
right,
1726 or something like that. I would hardly call that a landmark. The
right,
symbolic legend of Hiram Abiff. I don't necessarily agree for that for the same reason. Uh,
right,
I think it's old, but the government of the fraternity by a Grand Master, the prerogative of the Grand Master to preside over every assembly of the craft, the prerogative of the Grand Master to issue dispensations, conferring degrees, prerogative of the Grand Master to issue dispensations for opening and holding lodges otherwise not established, the prerogative of the Grand Master to make masons at sight, the necessity for masons to congregate in lodges, the government of lodges to be by a master and two wardens, the necessity of every lodge when congregated to be duly tiled, the right of every mason to be represented in all general meetings of the craft, the right of every mason to appeal from his lodge's decisions to the Grand Lodge, the right, dang dude, we're only on 14. The right of every mason to sit in every regular lodge. There's a lot. We'll just stop there.
well, but when I think of landmarks, I mean, most of that is Grand Lodge having authority over. We're in a Grand Lodge system where you know our charter comes from them. Our fraternal status comes from them. Our
Yeah,
charitable status comes from them. I, our status really isn't charitable. Our status is as a fraternity.
yeah,
In 501c10, they have an actual line item that says fraternity, and that's where our actual status is. It's not in the charity that everybody likes to say, in my
yeah.
opinion.
I would like to say real quick since we kind of got off on that tangent, just to wrap it up. There was a scholar that came after Mackey, Roscoe Pound,
Mm-hmm.
and he kind of summarized all 25 in the seven landmarks,
There
which
you go.
are the belief in a supreme being, belief in
Yep,
immortality, that a book of sacred law is an indispensable part of the furniture of the lodge, the legend of the
that's a
third
good one.
degree, secrecy, not specifying as to what, the symbolism. And speaking of secrecy, if you never read oh gosh,
Secret teachings.
no, oh man, it's our friend's book. I can't remember the Chris Williams book. There's no Texas without Freemasonry.
Oh
If you
yeah,
haven't read that, he talks about secrecy. It's pretty interesting.
yeah,
The symbolism of operative masonry and that a mason must be a man free born in a lawful age. So he summarized all that into seven.
right.
So
There's only one that I really didn't think was a landmark.
which one's that?
Uh, go back because I it was like the third or fourth one.
The Book of Sacred Law is the third one. The Legend of the Third Degree is the fourth
That one.
one. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't agree with that one either. For the
yeah,
reason
that's
I said already. It's
right.
it's
But all the rest are very real,
mhm.
and I think the secrecy can kind of fall into the ritual as well, because that's the part that we don't tell anybody. At least we didn't traditionally, but
Yeah,
even though there's a lot of stuff out there, it's not always 100% accurate.
yeah, I agree. And
But
knowing and experiencing are two different things.
right. So those are your landmarks. Those are the things that you're not going to change for anything. Everything else is organic. It's flexible. It can be done in different ways. You just got to make sure that it's the lodge doing it as a whole and not one person trying to push their weight, especially the master of the lodge, because he doesn't have that pull.
No,
That's not his job. His job is to work for the betterment of the collective. In fact, everybody's job is to work for the betterment of the collective.
you said
So
something.
go ahead.
You said something earlier. I didn't agree with. I know why you said it, but so you're talking about the worship master and him being bound by the rules and regulations, Grand Lodge law, state law, and all these things. He's
That's
really
what his reign is over. That's what his rule is over, making sure that those are followed.
he's supposed to make sure it's followed.
Yeah,
But saying here's the thing, here's the thing. He is not bound by any of that because that's just how powerful the worship master is. However, he is bound to the consequences of failing to stay within
well, yeah, he's got
that.
fiduciary responsibility.
Yes, yeah,
He's one of the three that can go to prison.
yeah. But if you have the rules and regulations, or if you have, you could even say the will of your lodge, and if you do not stay within due bounds, exactly like
Right,
what you're talking about, running it like a dictator, he's going to look around that lodge and on the last meeting of his term, and he will be the only person sitting in there
right. Yeah, exactly.
because people, yes, the worship master has a lot of power. He has enough rope. He has enough rope to hang himself with, right? However, it's a volunteer organization at the end of the day. It's a volunteer organization, and
Yep,
you you can't mandate success. All you'll do is run people off.
right. Now, another big thing with that being said is the treasurer. In fact, I heard it yesterday as I was walking out the door. Somebody said, "Well, that's the natural place for the master to go is the treasurer's seat. That's where all the power is, anyways. That's who really runs the lodge." And I looked back and I said, "That damn sure isn't the person that's going to rule the lodge if I'm the worshipful master."
Was it the same guy that jumped up and blurted out the
No,
questions?
no.
Yikes,
In
man!
fact, I think he was a visitor. But and I kind of felt bad afterwards because I was pretty harsh when I said that damn sure won't happen if I'm worshipful master.
I can maybe see that. I don't agree with it, but I can maybe see that with the secretary. But I don't. I've never heard of anything like that with the treasurer.
Well, the no, that's what I said. It's secretary. I
No, you
didn't say
said
treasurer.
treasurer.
Roll back the tape.
Okay, but I agree.
When
If you're
you're
talking,
editing, you roll back the tape and you listen.
okay, but yeah, okay.
But the secretary and I say that he does not have any power. All he does is manage what the worshipful master says and the will of the lodge.
Mhm.
That's it. He doesn't even make the agenda. The worshipful master is supposed to make the agenda. It is not the secretary. And and the secretary is just supposed to make it available for everybody.
Okay.
That's the secretary's job. The secretary is actually less important than the treasurer. That's why it goes in that particular order,
Hmm.
because the secretary is basically just there to take notes and perform the administrative tasks of the lodge. They are not there to make any decisions. They're not there to influence anybody's decisions. They're not there to hold the lodge hostage. And they're definitely not there to write whatever they want to in the minutes.
Yeah, they should be non-biased about all those things.
Oh man, I've actually had a secretary say that that I broke the law by changing the minutes because he wasn't there to stop me. And what I did is when the minutes were read, I stood up and I said, take that out, strike that from the record. That is an opinion and it is not factual.
Mhm.
And so, but this secretary thinks that amending it to take that out, that one word out, or actually is a little bit of a phrase. He actually thought that I could get in trouble for that.
Silly.
Nope,
Needs to go to
nope.
secretary school.
I know, right?
That should be
Funny
a
thing is,
thing.
funny thing is, I have been to secretary school a few times, and that's one of the things that I think every master should do is go to the secretaries and treasurer school.
I agree.
Definitely,
I agree.
definitely. And in Texas, we have that ability online. We have the online classes too.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Both of them, secretary and treasurer?
The secretary had one. Oh, it was early on. I don't know if it's still there. The treasurer's definitely has one there, but the secretary, I don't know if they still have it there. But
Neat.
they did do one online
I need to find
back in
that
the
for
day.
treasurer.
It's good. It's good. You'll like it. It's very revealing in not only the duties of the treasurer, but the the where the money is at Grand Lodge, where it all
Very cool.
it's
It's
very interesting.
on the website somewhere.
Yeah, it's on the member portal.
Hmm. Okay. I'll check that out.
Yeah, look at it may be under classes or something. I can look it up here in a second.
No, that's fine. I can pull it up. I'll just now that I have an idea where to find it. Cool.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah, they've got several of them.
let's go on to final thoughts. But yeah, if I don't find that, if you'll send that to me. I like to I got elected. I'm gonna be treasurer now for one of my lodges. So I'm gonna actually do my due
Yeah,
diligence as you
you need
should.
to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
And you need to go to the ones in person as well.
I agree. I think that'd be good. This is
I've
gonna get
been
me started.
right. Well, I've been both for in fact it's going to help you as soon as you get the all the privileges in Grandview because they go through a lot of the specific functions in Grandview for the treasurer.
It's good to know, man. Cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good program.
All right.
Um, Final thoughts.
I'll just say that you wouldn't think peace and harmony would be an hour-long conversation, but it's it's something that we give lip service to. We talk about peace and harmony, but really all it means is that we're too chicken to make the decisions that really need to be made because we're afraid someone's going to get upset with us. And really, how it should be is, as gentlemen, as Masons and brothers, if somebody says something I don't agree with, I should be able to employ rhetoric to discuss it without my ego coming into play, or I should be able just to walk away from it altogether until I am able to talk to it. And some things, not everything's worth our time. So you may just need to just walk away from some things. But these are all parts of peace and harmony. You don't have to come to every fight you're invited to, right? You don't have to wage every war that you see. And so this is why it's important to have this because we have to recognize that we are not always the smartest person in the room. And if you are in a lodge and you always feel as though you're the smartest person in the room, you probably need to find another lodge. Or maybe take a humble pill, right? And reevaluate yourself and subdue that ego because you're you should never be the smartest man in the room. Everybody has something to teach us. We're all at different paths, um, going different directions in our lives. So that's what I have.
Man, hard to follow. Well, you're absolutely right. It shouldn't be so easy to talk for an hour about peace and harmony. And sadly, we felt like we needed to have the talk. But this is the right time because we're right before election season,
Mhm.
and
It's that time of
we
year
have
when
a.
peace and harmony get tested the most sometimes.
It really does. It really does, and especially uh, when there's nominations from the floor.
Hmm.
You know, if uh, if egos aren't in check, then it can get real ugly.
Yeah.
And so we have to remember this, that it's a democracy. First and foremost, it's a democracy.
Hmm.
Secondly, we are gentlemen. At least we ought to be. If we're not, then maybe we need to look in the mirror and see what we need to change to be gentlemen. You know, one of the reasons I put on a suit is to remind myself that I am a gentleman, because I do, you know, I live out in the country, and well, I don't live in the country. I live in a country town, but you know, we're blue collar. It's blue collar down here, and we all talk rough and tough, and we all carry ourselves that way. And we have to remember sometimes that we're gentlemen, and that's our goal, is to be the gentleman of the day, finding solutions to the problems of the day.
Hmm.
And today, the solutions that we're having to find are the solutions for our own lodges. And until we can find the solutions in our own lodges and be successful in our own lodges, how are we going to branch out and really support our communities like we should?
Agreed.
And how is anyone going to take us seriously along the way if we don't do it as gentlemen? All of the things that we talked about tonight, from parliamentary procedure to rules and bylaws, rules and regulations, to our personal internal struggles that we need to face. All of these things are manageable. We live in a bipolar world, and it's on us to be the balance between those two brazen pillars. We are the beauty. We're supposed to be the beauty between the strength and the wisdom of God. That's our job. That's who we are. That's who you were made to be as a Mason. So remember that every time that you go to you come into contact with a brother and they have different views, remember that they represent that beauty as well. And if we keep seeing that in each other, then we'll be able to converse like gentlemen and come up with those solutions. I'm very excited that we had this talk. And speaking of peace and harmony and unity, um, someone who has created a great vision in our jurisdiction, most worshipful Tommy Chapman, will be coming to visit us soon, and he'll be able to talk a little bit on unity, and hopefully we'll have enough time that we can talk about the DMLA and Rainbow Girls. Um, but that's the cool thing about this year, is that we are in a year of peace. I've seen it. I see
Yep.
it when I travel. I'm so excited to travel this year. I didn't travel hardly any last year except for specific speaking engagements. This year, man, I'm driving all over the state just to hang out with the Grandmaster and hear what he has to say, because he's got some good stuff. And I think that if you have the opportunity, you need to show up.
Hmm.
We've got a lot of good things happening in Texas this year. People are coming back out of their shells. They're not afraid of things, and I think that speaks volumes to the leadership. So when you think about your lodge, how you carry yourself as a master, is going to reflect on your lodge. So if you set the expectations in a kind way, as the humble student that you are to many of the people sitting in those seats, and then you show the example, I think you set the expectation, show the example, and then when you correct, do it in private. When you praise, do it in public. That's the best thing you can do as a master.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I think that's about it. That's all I had to say. We need vision. We need to understand our culture. Anything that doesn't align with those two things, cut it out. Because all it does is cause tension in the lodge, and people are fighting about why are we doing this and why aren't you there helping me? So if it's got that situation, if you're in that situation, cut it out.
Mhm.
Nobody's saying that you have to give scholarships every year. You can give in other ways. Give $250 to the library to buy some new books or a new bookcase or something. Go read some books to the kids in kindergarten. You can do other things than strapping yourselves with the idea that you have to raise a bunch of funds so you can give away a bunch of dollars to a bunch of people that you'll never see again.
Mhm.
I mean, it's nice that you do it, but like Justin said, we take pictures and promote it all that kind of stuff. We're doing it more for marketing than we are doing it for the charity itself.
Yeah.
That's another thing we discussed tonight. So find your true north in your lodge. Well, find your true north in yourself, find your true north in your lodge, and then you'll be able to find your true north in your community. And I
Love it.
guess that about wraps it up, except
Awesome.
for keep it between the points.
Later, everybody.